Today, we have a really dope video for you. We will be comparing the 3 most popular controllers for the SURRON light beat right now. On the left here, we got the infamous BAC 4000. Then over here, we got ourselves the TC500 Torp controller, and to complete the trio, we got ourselves a brand new X9000 from EBMX, which we'll be installing in a different video. But to complete the trio of the 3 most popular controllers, we have to include this one to test it out. So in this video, we're going to be going over how it feels on the bike, ease of install. We'll talk about how easy the app is, how easy it is to tune, and just overall like prolonged longevity of how good the controller is over time. Battle test them, durability test them. Maybe I'll throw one in this pool. I don't know. We'll figure it all out, but we're gonna push these 3 controllers as hard as we possibly can to give you guys an honest review as to what I think is the best option for a controller as of right now. We'll talk about some pricing and stuff as well, and we'll talk about ease of receiving. We'll talk about everything. We'll get into it. I'll have a couple different categories and we'll go through it all. All right, let's get into it. All right, so the first control on the list is gonna be the Torp TC500. So we have that here on this bike, and right off the bat, you'll notice that unlike the other 2 options, you can't even see the actual physical controller because this is a nice plastic cover for it. So this is actually the controller here. You can see how small it is. So I guess if you're worried crazy ton about weight, but this is definitely by far the smallest and the lightest controller on this list. So that has it going for it. Installation video, I have an install video. I will link in the description if you guys want to see how easy of an install this was. However, to summarize, there is no extensions of phase wires, so therefore all in all direct bolt in pretty much with not a whole lot of super crazy electrical background necessary on how to get it to work. So install video, I will link in the description, but I'll just summarize and say that it is very easy and uses very easily accessible mounting points and makes a lot of sense. Overall, looks wise, I would give this a 10 out of 10. It's so sleek, and it just kind of like, I don't know, I guess you can kind of watch my hand, but there's no difference in the panel slope there. So like when it comes down, it just matches that skid plate angle perfectly. You know, it's sleek black color, just kind of matches in with the bike. It really can't complain anything about it. With that being said, the price depends on where you get it from, depends on if you're getting taxes and shipping and all that stuff. So I'll just leave a picture here of what, you know, the average price of one of these is going for. Other than that though, let's talk about reliability real quick. Reliability wise, as far as I'm concerned, I've heard of no real issues with these controllers. I know that Torp does a really good job of staying keep doing a good job of continuously releasing new updates for it to fix out bugs and give it better reliability and a couple different features here and there. For example, I know they're working on reverse and neutrals and stuff like that. So definitely a lot of potential with these controllers. As of right now, these controllers are compatible with either a stock battery up to a 72 volt battery. This controller is in fact just for the Light B or the X260, and as of the time of this recording, it is meant for specifically running a stock motor. So let's go do a quick little ride on this thing and we'll just see kind of how it feels. So you just kind of jump on, you turn the key, you still can use your stock display, and off we go. So that's that. Give this thing a little rip, see how she feels. Compared to a stock SURRON controller, this thing, you definitely feel the torque, you definitely feel the power. I mean, the front of the bike just comes right off the ground, coming from a dead stop. If I just mat the throttle, she's coming right off the ground. It definitely gives you a ton of torque, ton of power. And yeah, that throttle is, yeah, she really pulls. So let's go on the road real quick and let's do a couple little laps and we'll see kind of how she does. All right, on the road here, just cruising. Throttle feels really good. It feels a little jumpy, but it's very responsive. And that's kind of the beauty of part of the Torp tuning, is that it's very easy to tune your throttle response, your torque curve, your power curve, everything. I'll show you guys that all in a second in the app. But yeah, overall feeling of the bike is awesome. I mean, it feels really super smooth. You can feel that little bit of extra torque, a little bit of extra power. Really smooth. As you would expect though, obviously when you start kind of maxing out the stock speed, you know, your throttle stops giving that really torquey, responsive kind of jolt to it. But overall, I would say the Torp controller, it feels good on the bike, man. It really does. Let's give it a little wheelie test, shall we? Yeah, I mean, the bike comes right up, and I mean, wow, just awesome, super Just comes right up. And I mean, with the ability to tune the throttle so it's you know, you can make it as torquey or as responsive as you want, you can definitely find that perfect little spot for you. So let's take a gander at the app so that we can see how we can tune this bad boy. All right, so jumping into the app, it's really super easy to connect. All you have to do is turn that key on and you can see it's already connecting, which is super awesome. And it even tells me that my kickstand is down, which it is. So as soon as I hit the kickstand up, bam, see it fades away. App is super nice, tells me pretty much everything that I need to know about it. Temperatures of my motor controller and battery. It tells me my speed. I'll give it a little throttle here. You can see it it's live, you know, the app is live to everything. So let's go into our settings here and let's see what we can do for tuning. All right, so to tune the app, the kickstand has to be down to show that the bike is safe to tune. But as you can see, everything is super laid out, super easy and laid right in front of you. Adjusting your regen, adjusting your sport versus eco with motor currents, battery currents and everything. So we can switch over to eco. And again, this is all responsive to your stock sport / eco mode buttons on your speedometer. So super easy. You can set a really smooth eco mode and then obviously a more aggressive sport mode. Your general settings, obviously you can change from a stock battery to bypass 72 volt or you know, an aftermarket 60 volt. You can set your mins, your maxes, motor temp cutoffs. So pretty much if you're overheating, it turns it off for you so nothing bad happens to your motor. Obviously you can disconnect your kickstand sensor if you choose to, crash sensor and everything else. All right, and then beyond the regen settings as well, down on the bottom here, you have throttle settings. So you can click on that. And like what I was saying earlier when I was riding the bike, you can easily adjust your throttle response and your throttle curve. So this can adjust your dead zone and you can adjust really how that throttle feels in your hand when you come into power, whether it be super torquey or kind of a nice smooth come up. So this is also a really great feature that can definitely benefit you, especially if you're newer to riding bikes. You can kind of tune the throttle response down a little bit so that you can kind of get used to it as you go. Another super solid option that comes with the Torp TC500. And then on your info page on the app, you can also adjust between miles per hour and kilometers. You can adjust your units of temperature. And then here's the big one, is that you can adjust your sprocket ratio and your wheel diameter. So if you switch to a 17-inch supermoto like this bike is set up, then obviously that, and currently this bike is running a 58.2 sprocket. So again, your miles per hour on the speedometer stays semi-accurate rather than just having the bike guess. So this is honestly a really helpful thing, and this is also where you update your firmware for the bike. So all right, your ability to change things on the fly via the app is super easy, and it's so immediate. So as soon as I touch and change one of these things, it's immediately gonna, like if I can just crank this up, it saves, done, it's saved. I turn it back off, save. It's immediate, it's real time, super easy to use, and obviously like I was saying before, they update this app quite frequently. So if new modes come out or new options for this controller come out, you update the app and pretty much everything pops over for you. So it's super easy, and the app is free. I'll talk about that whole situation a little bit later on the BAC, but the app is free. The controller is very responsive to the app, easy to connect. So all in all, the TC500 is definitely a high contender in this top 3 face-off. So all right, let's get on to the next one. All right, and for the second controller on our list, we have, of course, the infamous, the OG, the one that started it all, the BAC 4000. Right off the bat, as you can tell in comparison to Torp, very obvious that it's there. We got this silver, blue, and orange design that definitely stands out a lot on the bike. They do make CNC covers now that you can put on there, kind of hide it a little bit better, but right off the bat, for a black bike, we're gonna give it a pretty low rating on the visual appeal scale because it really does stand out and doesn't really match the bike at all. With that being said, having the controller exposed like this is pretty strong case. You know, frontal impacts definitely reduced a good bit. However, as you guys can see, really doesn't tuck in perfectly with that skid plate, kind of like the Torp controller does. Ease of install, this one is going to be a little bit more challenging, honestly. If you guys can see here, you can see those phase wires. You actually have to use a phase wire extender, which means that you are going to have to bolt probably about 5-inch long sections of phase wire to your existing phase wires coming off of your motor, and then you'll have to use some big heat shrink to make that connection a little bit more waterproof before you bolt the controller itself. That being said, reliability, these have been around since pretty much the beginning of like the modding SURRON era. However, they do have their issues. Now, plenty of companies have the housing of the BAC 4000, and then you have, you know, the different tunes and stuff that they come out with personally. So wrapping merging them all up into one isn't necessarily possible because they all have their own kind of little bass tune, and depending on what company you get it from, they have their own thing. Obviously you have your own ability to tune part of it, but each one is a little bit different due to the manufacturer of it. That being said, on the other side here, can't really see it when it's bolted to the bike, but right in there is the infamous blinking red dot of death, which if you, for example, had Xbox, you know about the red ring of death, which pretty much means your Xbox is toast. It has the same kind of idea where if you see that blinking red light on your BAC 4000 or 8000, it's pretty much time for a new controller. Reliability is honestly not the best. With newer controllers coming out, they seem to be a little bit more meant for the SURRON, while this is more of just a vessel for the tune. So let's give this thing a little zip and see how she feels. Right off the bat, I will say as a disclaimer that this is the controller that I use the most as of the time of this recording, so comfortability and familiarity, I'm definitely the most familiar with the way this feels. However, I'll try to give you guys my best kind of, if I was riding this bike for the first time, what my initial opinion would be. Right off the bat here, I'll say that the throttle curve is very smooth, as you would expect from an aftermarket controller. However, I will say that this is where things start getting a little bit more confusing, because we have a egg rider display instead of a stock display, which makes things a little bit weirder. So with the BAC comes along with that. The flip side of things where things get really confusing is the egg rider has its own tune associated with it, while the BAC has its own tune associated with that. So if I have my egg rider turned off, which I do right now, the tune that's on my BAC is what's powering the bike. However, if I turn my egg rider on, the tune that I have associated with my egg rider then overrides the tune that I have on my BAC, and then the tune that's on this is what's powering my bike. Quick example, when I programmed my BAC, I had my regen turned off. If you guys don't know what regen is, it's pretty much when I let off, I'll go throttle and I'll let off. And what regen does is that when you let off the throttle, it will reverse the polarity of the motor so that it saves you a little bit of battery percentage. It's also what some regenerative braking is what they call it. It's also a way to slow the bike down without actually having to physically use your brakes. So on bikes like this that use mountain bike brakes, it kind of saves you some of the pad life. So it's not a bad setting, but for wheelies and stuff like that, not really the best. So for me going in, I thought it was turned off, which according to my BAC tune it was, but then on my egg rider, it's a totally different tune, so it never was. So for the longest time, I was always trying to figure out why I had regenerative braking, because I mean, you feel it. You let off and you feel the bike go, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. But then I got lucky enough to meet somebody that told me, hey man, like if you read the fine print, it will tell you that the egg rider overpowers the BAC tune. So kind of weird. However, this bike is running a 72 volt battery, so to see like the torque, obviously the bike is it comes in pretty crazy. However, I will say that I did used to run this controller prior to having a 72 volt battery on this bike, and I will say from experience that having just a controller adds about 15% torque and power pretty much across the board. So no matter what controller you guys end up getting, you will notice that increase in power and torque. And on the flip side of that, I will also go ahead and say that the controller give the battery a little bit better life. It seems like with a controller, your battery lasts a little bit longer. I think it just does better some way to make sure that the battery life doesn't get used up as fast or something. I'm not really 100% sure, but it feels like your battery life lasts a little bit longer. So overall, I'll give it the rating of the feeling of it. The throttle's really smooth. The bike without a 72 volt battery is still definitely more torquey and more powerful than it was without it. The install, like I said, was it's about the same as a Torp controller and about the same as the EBMX controller. However, that's just the controller aspect of it, but adding those phase wire extensions definitely adds a little bit more confusion, and something that the other controllers that are on this list do not require. So it's just an added step beyond what the other ones require you to do. So at this point now, you guys got my initial opinion and reaction of how it feels on the bike. Overall, feels good, feels smooth. So let's jump onto the app. Let me show you guys what that all looks like. All right, so we're gonna go right in the app here, and we are gonna click on, so first of all, we're gonna scan for our controller. As you see, it pops up as the e-bike. We're gonna click on that, and now we are connected to it. So as you can see right there on the top, it says these parameters dictate the controller performance only when the egg rider is off and not being used. So we have pretty much all your normal settings. We have our general settings, which is where you're starting to brake, throttle parameters, battery parameters. Then we have motor parameters, but that's all pretty much the same. Settings, just a different look onto how to adjust it. When we go into ride, let's say that we want to upgrade or increase our regen. Right now my regen is at 1%, as you guys can see here. So if we want to turn that to 10, for example, we'll just add a 0, done, and we'll save settings. Now this little thing will pop up and says, please ensure the bike remains on during the save process. At any point the device loses connection or loses power, the control may be irreparably damaged and will need to be replaced. This is not something that pops up on any one of the other controllers, so kind of a little sketchy. So at this point you'd hit save settings. It would say the settings need to be done. So yeah, that's pretty simple. So this is where things get weird. I backed out of that, as you guys saw, and it's still at 10. So it's like, what? So then it's like, it kind of is one of those weird things. This app is very strange, not really something that I like. Side note of this app is that you can't adjust your throttle curve. You can't really get those fine-tuned settings as you guys saw on the Torp. And depending on where you get your BAC from, some of the controller app for the BAC actually cost you money. The Torp controller app is free, as well as the app that controls the EBMX X9000. So the BAC is the only one that has apps that potentially cost money to use, and they also are kind of a little bit finicky, to say the best. So with that being the EBMX app, let's jump over to the Egg Rider app. So opening up the Egg Rider app, again, you will move out with the screen, you'll pull down to scan, and if your device is on, which mine is off right now, so I'll turn that on. If you have your Egg Rider on, it'll pop up, and there it is. So I'll connect to it, and this is what you're met with. So this is where things get even more confusing, honestly. You'll see your voltage, your battery percent, your speed. If I start rolling, obviously that will be live, and that will turn on. If I go into the ASI settings here at the bottom, this is where all of your throttle, phase, regens, max throttle speeds, battery limits, field weakening, all of this comes into play. Things get kind of confusing. So when you want to change stuff, you have to hit read, as in reading what's going on. So now you said, okay, it's in reading. So now if you go to regen so this is on the left you have road, on the right you have off-road, which is pretty much the difference between like eco and sport mode. So now if I want my regen to be 10, I then have to hit 10 and read, and then I have to back out and hit right. So you have to do this weird bounce between read and write to change stuff. It's not simple, like you type in what you want and just hit save and go. It's kind of weird, honestly. And then this screen is really not very helpful. Power levels, again, this is where you have the ability to adjust between your 9 power levels that the Egg Rider has. The power levels are selectable on the fly, which is I do like that about having the Egg Rider, having the ability to change between power modes 1 through 9. So for example, if you loan your bike to somebody for a second, like, oh, let me try that, and you can tune it down from, you know, something crazy to something a little bit easier going. However, like I said before, I don't even use the Egg Rider, so not really valid in this particular conversation. But if you change something and you don't press read in the right, it doesn't save. So you might think that you're saving the settings that you were desiring, and it isn't the case. So, you know, kind of confusing with all that stuff, honestly. And here in display settings, you can adjust between miles per hour and kilometers and stuff like that. Mode labels, you have Eco Sport or on-road, off-road, nothing crazy about that. Really, all this stuff is pretty much the same. And then here is where you can select between what battery you use. However, I will argue the fact, if you guys are seeing this for the first time, then you guys can probably immediately realize that this is so much more of a confusing screen than what Torp, and I guess you guys will see in a second what the EBMX screen looks like, but this is definitely a lot more kind of confusing and finicky than what you guys saw before and what you guys are going to see after this. So that is pretty much my quick summary of what the BAC app and what the Egg Rider app looks like. Honestly, from my personal experience and everything that I talked about before and just what they look like, I'm gonna give it, like, honestly, like a 2 or a 3 out of 10. Because it's really not user-friendly. It really can be confusing, and having 2 different settings, if you turn on your Egg Rider or if you have it off, it just gets even more confusing, because it's like, okay, you know, what power mode do I want? What setting do I want? It's like, do I have my Egg Rider on? Do I have it off? It's just, there's definitely just a lot of numbers and a lot of extra settings that other controllers don't have. So if you're looking for something that you can just jump on and go ride and not worry about. I'm gonna go ahead and say this one might be a little bit more confusing than what you're looking for. Cost of this controller, I'll put on the screen right now, but obviously it depends on, there's a couple of different distributors of the BAC 4000. So obviously, just like the Torp controller and just like the EBMX, it kind of depends on when you buy it, who you buy it from, and everything else. So anyway, yeah, the BAC 4000, once you get the settings, I'll give it that. When you get the settings right on it, it's a pretty smooth controller. However, the longevity of how good it is yet to really, it's starting to show its true colors, because people really are starting to melt these things. So, all right, let's jump on to the last one on our list, which is going to be the EBMX X9000. All right, and the third controller on our list is, of course, going to be the EBMX X9000. I just did an install video on this, so if you guys want to check that out, I will have that elsewhere on my channel. However, first impressions, I like the sleek design. It looks good. They come in a bunch of different colors, so you can definitely find the right cover to match your bike. It's just those 6 bolts in the front there. They pop off and you can put a different cover back on. I like that because you can change the color, but also if you damage the front, you can also replace it without having to get a whole new controller, which is, you know, hopefully you're not damaging them, but you know, it's an option. During the install is just about as simple as every other controller is. However, I will say that it felt like there was more wires than there needed to be, and I wish there was a ways to kind of reduce that. Like if, for example, this comes with a regen brake as a thumb throttle, and I don't plan on ever using that, so I wish there was a way to take that cable and disconnect it so there wasn't as much wiring loom in my frame. I feel like this definitely has the most amount of wires in comparison. Initial reaction to holding the controller is it's definitely the heaviest on this list. I will say it definitely felt heavier, and I just rode down here to do this, and I will have to say I definitely noticed the weight of it a little bit over the BAC. The Torp is, you know, so small and so light, you definitely won't notice it in comparison to a stock controller, but this one you definitely will notice the weight of, especially when you're doing wheelies. The price is obviously subjective as to where you get it. However, I will leave the price on the screen, but I'm pretty sure this is the most expensive controller on the list. However, it is also the only controller on this list that is capable of using the same controller on not only the Light B, but also the Ultra B. However, we're not talking about the Ultra B, so it doesn't really matter as much. This is currently on this list. The TC500 is capable of running with the Torp motor. The BAC 4000 is not capable of running with a SURRON motor or aftermarket controller, and the EBMX X9000 is capable of running with not only a SURRON motor but also a EBMX motor. Definitely capable. However, like I said before, it is definitely the heaviest on this list. So let's get into a quick little ride and we'll see how it feels on the bike. Another cool thing about this controller is it does come with its own monitor. Just for you guys, I'll take the plastic off. Ooh. So with this controller, it comes with a monitor, kind of like how the BAC comes with an egg rider. This comes with EBMX's version of an egg rider. So when I turn the key on, it'll automatically pop on. On this controller, I have three modes. I have 3 for dirt, 3 for race, as they call it. So I go up to 3, because that's the tune that I have programmed for the settings I like. And that's that. So let's go see how this feels. Right off the bat, I will say that I tuned out a lot of the dead throttle that I had with the BAC, which is all tunable in the BAC as well. However, just personally speaking, it feels a little bit different right now just because there's that little dead spot in the throttle isn't there anymore. But again, you can tune that out with the BAC as well. So first reaction is it's definitely snappy. The power definitely comes in on the stock tune, the tune that it defaults to when you first program it. I mean, it pulls the tire right up. Again, I am running a 72-volt battery, so on a stock battery, you're not gonna have it be as crazy, but it definitely wants to come up pretty fast. Do a little slow down here and do a little wheelie test. Something is seriously off. Why does it feel like I'm skipping the tire? Jesus Christ. All right, let's give this thing a little wheelie test, shall we? Throttle is definitely smooth. Like I said before, you can definitely feel the weight of the controller a little bit more in comparison to the X9000. However, I don't think it's really that big a deal on a 72-volt battery. With that being said, with the weight coming into a factor on a stock bike with a stock battery, you might not have as much power to get that weight up. Obviously, when it comes to stuff like this, it's better to lose weight than gain weight. Noticeably heavier than the BAC 4000. All right, so jumping into the app here. Obviously the bike has to be running to do this, and we'll just hit search, and then your controller will come up and you'll connect to it. Connecting to it, you'll get met with all your live information. Right now we're in race mode. If I hit the throttle, you'll see it's live. So this is all pretty helpful, pretty normal, whatever. Then we'll go over to our settings tab, and this is where you'll find all of the tune settings and everything else. General, this is where you're gonna program what bike type, what motor. This is interesting to me because if we take out a motor type, you can see just how many motors are already usable on this, which is crazy. Obviously you have your battery type. All this is super easy to select, super easy to find. Wheel diameters, and if you want to change between units, between miles per hour, kilometers, Fahrenheit, Celsius, all that stuff. Modes, power levels, obviously like I said before, we have 3 on this bike. So 1, 2, and 3, nice and simple. You have race and you have street. So I just keep it in race, and I just tune everything based off of the race settings because it's just kind of easier. Throttle, you can adjust your deadband and your throttle curve and all that stuff. Nice and simple. And I mean, other than that, there's some other controller calibration stuff, but this is all just to calibrate and match and mate the controller to the bike. So that's all stuff you would do with the install, not as much as just like your daily use stuff. So all in all, I will compare this app very closely with the Torp app. I think that they're both, obviously they're a little bit different. However, realistically speaking, they're both easy to use. I mean, if you go in here, let's say you wanted to change your power level 1 from 10 kilowatts to 11 or 8. So we'll go down to 8.5. All we'll do, hit save complete, okay, done. It's on the bike, it's done, it's ready to go. Just like that. So the EBMX app and the Torp app are definitely substantially easier to use than the BAC in my opinion. All right, final thoughts on the controllers. Between the X9000, the BAC, and the Torp, I'm gonna go ahead and give the best looking controller to probably the X9000, honestly. It's sleek, it looks good, and with the ability to change out those cover plates for different colors, you can really match whatever, kind of color scheme you have going on with your bike. The Torp, you can't change the color on that plate, and the BAC is obviously blue and orange and silver and kind of random. Weight-wise, I will give the lightest one to the Torp and the heaviest to the X9000. I would say that the easiest to tune on the fly, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's a tie between the X9000 and the Torp. For installation purposes, I would say that the Torp is probably the easiest to install due to its nature of mounting inside of the bike instead of externally, and it helps a lot with cable management, so I guess keep that in mind. On a flip note, if you do get the X9000 or the BAC, just keep in mind that cable management is extremely important, and if you pinch a wire, chew a wire, or you put it somewhere weird where it starts to rub, you will eventually damage it, so just keep that in mind. Cost-wise, I'll have the winner for the cheapest controller right here. I guess to go along with the app stuff, I will also say that the Torp and the EBMX app are both free, and the BAC, depending on where you get it from, sometimes you do have to pay whatever it is, 10 bucks in the app store to get it, so that's another thing to consider. Future modification wise, I will give the X9000 and the Torp another tie for first because they are capable of running aftermarket motors, and the BAC is not. You have to get the BAC 8000 to be able to run a Socin motor, while the X9000 takes care of that. The only thing that I will say that is kind of a flip of the coin, depending on how you look at it, is the X9000 is currently the only controller that goes both on the Light B and can go on the Ultra B. So take that as you will. Maybe if you have future plans of getting an Ultra B and you're gonna sell your Light B, then maybe you can switch the controllers later. I don't know, it's up to you guys, but I'll just put that in there as a little side note. I really won't take points off from the other controllers because, you know, we're not really talking about the Ultra B, we're talking about the Light B. However, potentially something to think about and keep in mind. So that being said, that's my honest take on the 3 most popular controllers for the Light Bs. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Tell me what controllers you guys run, what your experiences have been, either good or bad, with any of the 3 controllers on this list. Or if you guys run a controller that I didn't talk about, let me know down in the comments. Tell me what you guys think about it. You know, is it something that I should take a look at? Or, you know what, I know that Electric & Co., they're more known for building razors and other stuff like that, but they just got into the controller game and they just came out with one that is definitely by far the cheapest, and it kind of took after the Torp design of having it be small and compact. So maybe that's something to look at. I don't know. Haven't had any experience with that yet. So let me know down below in the comments what you guys think about all this. And till the next one, guys, peace.